Welcome to G-Man Gaming and Reviews. This is going to be a reaction to a specific part of Adam Something's video called The Problem with Warhammer 40k. I already did a video response to this video, I believe, but I wanted to talk specifically about a part of the video where he references Starship Troopers. Now, at the time, I had not read the Starship Troopers book. Right? I hadn't read it. I finished it very recently. And I wanted to address just the part about Starship Troopers because, like I said, the book Starship Troopers is actually a really good book, but it's not what I was expecting. After watching Adam Something's take on the book, you would have thought that it was a jingoistic movie, like an action movie sort of book. But it really was actually not what I was expecting, right? I'll get into that in the video, but the book is not a jingoistic, jar-headed book, right? So it's not, if you're thinking that it's a book that glorifies war and that makes, like, the Terran Federation sound like heroes, or that it's just a simple book with, like the movie was, it actually really isn't. During the book, there are numerous times where it discusses themes of militarism and whether it's good or bad in the terms of how characters think about things, right? So, like I said, it's real. Like Adam, I don't know if Adam Something actually read the book, but I'm gonna play what he said about the book in its entirety, and then I'm going to sort of dissect it based on what it was that when I actually read the book. So let's get started.
Starship Troopers is in many ways the predecessor of Warhammer, being one of the trailblazers of hard science fiction. Its setting is also similar to Warhammer's. We have a sort of centralized, militaristic human empire called the Terran Federation, battling it out with various alien species, including giant space bugs. Much like Warhammer, Starship Troopers grew out of an original niche IP. With Warhammer 40k, it was a tabletop game. With Starship Troopers, it was a book which later got adapted into series, movies, and games, making the IP transition from niche to the relative mainstream. Now, tabletop Warhammer is very different from video game Warhammer, Space Marine 2 in particular. And in the same way, there is a big difference between Starship Troopers, the book, and Starship Troopers, the movie. The 1997 movie, which was at the center of that god-awful discourse. The Starship Troopers book is rather jingoistic. Some people called it fascist literature, but I don't really agree with that label. The book is militaristic, obsessed with toughness and masculinity, heroism and honor, but it's otherwise not covert fascist propaganda or anything. It was written by a former soldier at the height of the Red Scare and McCarthyism in the 1950s. So as far as I can see, Starship Troopers is really a product of its time. It's still very right-wing, idolizes the military.
Okay, I was gonna wait for the entire thing. But I'll have to stop it right there because I think he's gonna go off on a real tangent. Okay, so first off, to say that the book is militaristic is probably, like, it's almost like he hasn't actually read the book, because I read the book. Okay, I'm going to dismantle this because, I'm going to dismantle this because it's like completely wrong. It's sort of correct, but it's also really like when you say militaristic, if you were to say to me that something is militaristic, I would assume that it makes military life sound really good. But the book itself doesn't actually do that, right? For instance, the book starts with the relationship between Johnny Rico, who's the main, I suppose, protagonist of the book, and Carl, right? And Johnny Rico joining the military. Now, it gives a little backstory about Johnny Rico's time as a student towards the end of when I think he's turning 18. And then the book starts with him wanting to join the military. Now, he doesn't actually want to join them. He's not actually 100% convinced that he should join the military. The reason that he wants to join the military is because his friend Carl, who is not really a rich kid like Johnny Rico is, but he's good at electronics, has a passion for joining the military. Now, in Starship Troopers, so when Johnny Rico and Carl get to the recruiting camp, the recruiting office, right after, they're actually greeted by a military veteran who basically has no legs, if I recall correctly. He's maimed, he's disabled, right? And so when they get there, a female friend of Johnny Rico, who Johnny Rico has an interest in romantically, she walks up to the military recruiter, and he takes her immediately in. The reason that he does that is because the Navy needs pilots who are skilled with mathematics, right? And it turns out that this particular character, I can't remember her name, it was a Mexican name, Carmelita or something like that. It turns out she's really good at maths, and the recruiter just sends her through because the recruiter really goes out of his way to recruit her. But when Johnny Rico and Carl come up to volunteer, the recruiter actually tries to talk them out of it. In fact, the recruiter actually reveals that the reason that they put him at the front of the recruitment office is to basically dissuade people from joining the military, right? Because in Starship Troopers, joining the military is compulsory. There are benefits to joining the military, but there doesn't appear to be any conscription, right? So to say that a book that begins by showing a disabled person trying to dissuade people from joining the military is militaristic doesn't even make any sense. I would say that this book does a really good job in portraying the realities of being in the military, right? And there's not just as an example in when Johnny Rico and Carl go to join the military. There's also the fact that at numerous times through boot camp, it's revealed that the sergeants or the trainers, they are actually going out of their way to try to get people to leave the military, right? So normally when you think of books that are militaristic in nature, they normally tend to not have these sorts of themes. And then I believe throughout the book, there's a I think there was a soldier. I think the name stuck with me. His name was Hendrix. That was his last name. And so what happens with Hendrix is that Hendrix ends up assaulting a senior officer by the name of Zim, because Zim told Hendrix to freeze. And so what happens is in the military, they're in training and they're in boot camp, and the Marines are told that when they freeze, they have to literally stay there and not move, right? And Hendrix ends up being on an anthill, and so he ends up moving, right? And so Sergeant Zim comes up to him, and I think, and he hits him with a stick, right? And then Hendrix decides to assault him back. Now, at this point, Sergeant Zim takes Hendrix to his senior officer, and Sergeant Zim doesn't actually tell the senior officer that Hendrix assaulted him, right? So the senior officer goes to get out a resignation form so Hendrix can resign, but then Hendrix actually reveals that that he actually assaulted Sergeant Zim. And because he revealed it, right, he ends up getting 10 lashes, and he ends up getting dishonorably discharged. And this actually affects Johnny Rico, right? He starts thinking about how this could happen to him and maybe he should leave the military, right? So the point is that, and Hendrix is the same person who earlier in the story talks about, he questions why he should be in the military or why they should follow orders. Does that sound to you like a militaristic book? Does that sound to you like a book that you could call fascistic or militaristic? A book that actually has soldiers asking questions about whether or not they should be in the military? So I'll let Adam something continue, but it's almost like he never even read the book.
In fact, in that world, the only way to gain full rights as a citizen is through military service and so on. But is it fascist? No, it's just 1950s right-wing and jingoistic. Imagine a sci-fi universe created by an ex-military boomer who has a Clint Eastwood profile picture on Facebook and who can't shut up about how back in his day everyone...
It's weird that he called it jingoistic, because in the book, I can't find any reference to racism. At least in terms of, if he's calling it jingoistic in the sense of the Terran Federation having wars with other races, but I don't know if the book really portrays that it's jingoistic, because the book really is written from the perspective of a soldier, and it says that it's up to the politicians to decide who they wage war on. So like I said, it's really more of a reflection of what life in the military is like, rather than being explicitly jingoistic.
Worked 26-hour workdays, 10 days a week, and no one complained, as opposed to the weak and entitled generation today. Military service should be...
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of weird that they use Clint Eastwood for Starship Troopers. I don't really think it fits, but anyway. I think this is more of a representation of... I'm not going to get into it, but I think this is more of a representation of Adam Something's views in general on certain topics, rather than it has anything to do with the book itself.
Also to teach these soy latte drinking weaklings some discipline. But in person, the guy is nice to you and always offers you beer when you come over. That's the authorial context of the Starship Troopers book, basically. Now keep in mind, while the book itself isn't fascistic, the Terran Federation in it kind of is. And the values of the 1997 Starship Troopers movie are, in many ways, the opposite of the books. The director, Paul Verhoeven, grew up during the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands and didn't really like fascist, hyper-militaristic ideologies for obvious reasons. So he proceeded to subvert our expectations. Not with medieval anti-air railguns firing tungsten rounds at Mach 5, but by turning the Terran Federation, the Starship Troopers, into a satire of jingoism and fascism. While the book depicts the Terran Federation's campaign against the bugs as a heroic struggle, the movie portrays it as a hopeless war started on false pretenses, fought by a bunch of propaganda-addled macho idiots marching into certain death, where instead of heroic acts, glorious sacrifices, and cinematic last stands, you just get torn apart by giant bugs. I mean, the whole reason for the war is that supposedly bugs pulled the Javier Milei and destroyed Buenos Aires by launching an asteroid from a different solar system towards Earth. If anyone is getting Iraq War, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction vibes, yeah, you should. The Bugs' home system is tens of thousands of light years away. Even if they somehow managed to precisely hit Earth from such a distance, the asteroid would have taken millions of years to get there.
Okay, I'm gonna stop him here. This is the reason why I read the book. Because when I watched the movie, there's no mention of this. What Adam Something is making here. That Clandathu is all away and that they couldn't have done it. There's no mention of this in the movie, right? So I thought that maybe he was referring to the book. And he is not. In the book, it doesn't actually talk about a conspiracy theory like this. All it says is that Buenos Aires was attacked by the bugs. So, this doesn't even make any sense, because this isn't mentioned in the movies and it isn't mentioned in the book. So I get that if you read some lore out in the middle of nowhere, that makes sense. But why would the people who wrote the book know that the Clandathu system is too far away to have done this attack in the first place? Right? I was going to criticize this when I did the first video, but I thought that maybe he read it in the book. He didn't read it in the book. Nowhere in the book does it say what he's referring to now. It literally says the exact same thing in the book, which is that Buenos Aires was attacked, right? And I think Johnny Rico's mother dies, and his father ends up joining military service. So, like I said, I don't know, he must have read some random lore, but this isn't mentioned in the book, nor is it mentioned in the movie, so it doesn't even make sense to mention it.
So no, the bugs could not have done it. The whole asteroid business also begs the question, if the bugs can pull that off, why don't they keep doing it once humans attack them? Because it's all bullshit. The asteroid was an accident at best and a false flag operation at worst that got blamed on the bugs to keep the war machine and thus the military-industrial complex occupied. In the end, however, all humans accomplish is getting a bunch of soldiers murdered. By the end of the movie, we see literal child soldiers deployed as the Terran Federation is running out of regular troops. And it's not like the bugs are a threat to humanity. They aren't like the Tyranids, actively trying to eat humanity. The bugs are on the other side of the galaxy and generally don't bother you unless you bother them first.
Yeah, but see, the problem is that I don't know where he's getting this from. Because it's not mentioned in the book at all. I read the entire book. So I don't know if he's looking at some supplemental lore that I don't have access to. But nowhere in the book or the movie is this mentioned, right? So comparing a book that was written in like the 1960s to the Iraq War is kind of ridiculous. The book was written like 50 years before the Iraq War even happened. I can't understand how you could see parallels between this, right? The only way that I could understand how you see parallels between this is if you see these parallels between everything. But like I said, it's not in none of this is mentioned in the book, so I don't know how the book is I don't know. Like I said, it's not in the book. That's all I can really say about this. In the book, it just says, from Johnny Rico's perspective, Buenos Aires was bombed by the bugs, right? From Johnny Rico's perspectives. And the book is mostly written from Johnny Rico's perspective. And the movie is mostly from Johnny Rico's perspective. So I don't understand, like, are you angry at Johnny Rico for not understanding something, like, that he couldn't have understood because he's just a soldier? That he wouldn't have even had access to this information anyway? So, like I said, it's not in the book, so I don't know what this relevance has to do with anything.
Which humans did by settling on the bugs' home planet. During the closing scene.
See, how do you know that? Right? Because it's not in the book and it's not in the movie, and even if it's in supplemental lore, if it's not in the book and it's not in the movie, I really don't know where he's getting this from, because it's not in the book, and the book doesn't say anything of this. That's why I read the book. The movie doesn't say anything of this, so like I said, don't know where he's getting it from.
Of the Starship Troopers movie, the soldiers capture a brain bug, the bug's equivalent of a command and control vehicle, basically. In this scene, Neil Patrick Harris reads the brain bug's emotions and loudly proclaims it's afraid to the soldiers around him, after which everyone erupts in cheers and the whole scene is played off seemingly as the glorious ending of a righteous military campaign. Except it's not, and the movie goes...
Okay, so, this scene isn't in the book. So, at the very end of the book, it ends with... So, most of the book doesn't really have any combat in it. There's combat at the beginning of the book, and then there is really combat at the end, right, as to how they capture the brain bug. Now, a couple of things that are different between the book and the movie. In the book, Johnny Rico is a member of the Mobile Infantry. They use war suits. They're not regular soldiers. They're not just regular soldiers like you see in the movie, right? They actually have mobile... That's the reason why they're called Mobile Infantry, right? So, that's one of the differences, but that scene isn't in the book. I don't know what... it doesn't make sense, the assertions that's being made here, because, I mean, when you take a book and you convert it to a movie, you only have like 2 hours to cover the ideas that are in a book. If you came from this video from the previous one, you would have noticed that I said the same thing about Space Marine 2, and how Gums's video said that, it wasn't an accurate portrayal of Space Marine lore, which is true, but the thing is, when you are adapting a book to a movie, you have to adapt it, you have to change the story. So, I mean, I don't understand how you can look at a book that was written in the 19th, and I think the movie Starship Troopers, I'm pretty sure it came out before 9/11, So, I think so. But I don't think it has anything in relation to it. I think, yeah.
To great lengths showing you why in the 2 hours preceding this scene. First off, as I've said, it was the humans who attacked first. The bugs did not...
Yeah, but see, I don't know if the movie says that. I've watched the movie. The movie doesn't make it sound like the bugs attacked first. And realistically, it is true that during wartime, propaganda is presented. That's definitely true. But there's no way that somebody could read the book or the movie and think that, because the book nor the movie actually say that the bugs started that the bugs didn't start the conflict. So, I don't know where he's getting this information from.
Start this conflict. They were attacked based on false pretenses, and they decimated the humans for it. I mean, if the literal child soldiers by the end aren't indication enough, I don't know what to tell you. Hundreds of thousands of human deaths for no reason. That end scene with the brain bug is basically one massive cope by the Terran Federation. The director even added a nice little touch. When the bug starts jittering out of fear, the soldiers quickly back away from it. This is not a victory. You captured what is basically a single command and control vehicle at the end of your campaign that cost the lives of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It's like when the other Federation, the Russian one, exhibits a captured Abrams on Red Square. Yeah, you got that.
No. That's a false equivalency. No. In the book, okay, the Terran Federation actually has not been able to capture a brain bug alive, right? They've been able to capture what are warriors and workers, but they've never and they've never actually been able to capture a brain bug alive, right? So the reality is that it's not the same thing at all, because a brain bug could give the Terran Federation scientists insight into how the brain bug controls the warriors, how it controls the rest of the bugs, right? The other thing that the Terran Federation would want to get is a queen as well, which is mentioned in the book. I don't know if it's in the movie, but no, these are not equivalent to each other. Capturing an Abram, it would be more like if they had captured a commander from it would be like more if they were showing a commander who had been captured from the Pentagon, right? Like a commanding officer, like a 5-star general. That would make more sense. But it would also be like if they captured a hive tyrant in Warhammer 40k. Or like somebody who, so that they could get an understanding of how the synapse creatures work. This comparison doesn't make sense.
One, congrats, but you also lost more than 18,000 pieces of heavy equipment in Ukraine. And it's
I'm also understanding what has this got to do with Starship Troopers. The book was written in the 50s. But anyway, like, I think what... I'm just going to stick to, like, Starship Troopers, but I think what this person's doing is they're taking, like, modern-day politics and they're seeing it in everything. It doesn't make sense because Starship Troopers was written in like the 50s and 60s, so... But then again, it's got nothing to do with the book, so this is just it's a false equivalency.
It's just the visually confirmed losses, not to mention your casualties. Anyway, the Starship Troopers movie is very clear about it being a satire. The discourse that erupted around it, however, was truly mind-boggling. On one side, you had people with the reasonable take. Everything that happened to humans is basically their fault, the war with the bugs was completely unnecessary, and the Terran Federation is a crazy, jingoistic fascist empire.
Okay, so the thing is that I don't think that someone could come to these conclusions based off reading the book or the movie. I was giving Adam something the benefit of the doubt in the previous video because I had not read Starship Troopers. So I assumed that what he was saying was accurate. This is not. Like I said, the book does not really cover now there is the discussion of moral philosophy in the Terran Federation that all students have to do, right? But the book doesn't really go into what is the political reasons for why the war against the bugs. It just says it just says in the book that it's politicians who decide what the soldiers are supposed to do, right? So no, the book doesn't actually say what it is that you're saying. It doesn't really it doesn't go into the politics at all as to why the bugs are being targeted. And it wouldn't make sense to, because the book is written from the perspective of, for the most part, of Johnny Rico. So Johnny Rico is a regular soldier. He wouldn't be told anything about why the war is taking place.
I mean, the director put Neil Patrick Harris in a literal SS uniform. The message is very clear. Also, the brain bug scene is followed up by a propaganda video in which people gleefully tortured the brain bug, so there's that too. But
okay, so first off, when you say gleefully torture the brain bug in the movie, I think there's some things to explore here, right? I don't think the movie quite does a. If we look back at the book, like I said, in the book, the Terran Federation has never captured a brain bug alive. They know they exist, but they've never captured one, right? So I mean, yes, the Terran Federation has propaganda, and yes, them showing the brain bug being surgically interrogated is considered a win. But it's considered a win. I mean, yes, but you could say that about anything, like that, like, you know what I mean? It's like, but in specifically when it comes to the book, the reason it was a win was because they had never captured one alive, right? In fact, every mission that had been sent prior to the end of the book to capture one alive had been a failure, right? So them capturing one alive is a big thing. So I can't say what it is that the person who directed the movie was implying about this. They very well could have implied what Adam Something is saying. But from the perspective of the book makes a lot more sense as to why this is, whereas in the movie it doesn't really go into in depth why they're finding the brain bug, apart from they just need to find one. So, like I said, I'm questioning whether or not Adam Something read the book, because I don't think he did now.
some disagreed with this assessment. A lot of people legitimately did not understand how anyone could take the side of the bugs, empathize with the bugs even, when all the Terran Federation characters are attractive and the bugs are disgusting. And
Okay. Okay, first off, this has nothing to do with the book. I like I said, I don't know what. I'm not even gonna cover this because it's got nothing to do with the book.
I mean, that's the whole point. The way you instinctively feel about the bugs is how a white supremacist feels about blacks, or how a Nazi feels about Jews.
What? I don't think I need to really say anything. I'm just gonna move on. This is insane. Like, this comparison here doesn't, like, it's got nothing to do with the book. Let's move on.
Revolting freaks to be crushed under their boots. Not coincidentally, this is often how Jews were depicted by Nazi propaganda. Disgusting insects to be purged from the face of Earth. The movie essentially challenges you to take the side of the group you were conditioned to hate. And oh boy, did many people fail.
No. I don't know where these theories are coming from. The book. I mean, let's be realistic here. Starship, I think this person is reading too much into this, right? It's just a movie. And what I mean by that is that, one, the book is actually better, right? Even though there's very little combat in the book, right? The book actually, like, one, the book is not really very, it doesn't represent the lore very well of Starship Troopers anyway. So it's not really an accurate depiction of the book. So you can't really make the connection with... I had forgotten this part of the video, actually, because I was just going to talk about the connection between what Adam Something was saying and Starship Troopers after having read the book. Like I said, I'm just going to move on because I don't think this has anything to do with the book. Like I said, nobody reading the book would have come to this conclusion. The book doesn't talk about Nazis or fascists. It doesn't mention them. I mean, it seems to me that the book is set far into the future. So I would say that this is an example of this individual injecting modern day politics into something that, like I said, the book was written 50, 60 years ago. Like, this modern day politics didn't exist. So... and from having read the book, it has nothing to do with it. I'll just move on. It's not relevant to the book.
This test. The discourse essentially became an indicator of who would fall for Nazi propaganda, where all the Aryan Germans are depicted as tall, strong and beautiful, and all the supposed subhumans as revolting freaks. With that, Starship Troopers gave us a very important revelation about the importance of aesthetics. If an otherwise horrible faction is depicted as badass and handsome in an IP, some people will start idolizing them and co-opt their visuals, no matter how monstrous the faction is or how much satire you heap on. And this brings us to Warhammer 40k. Let's consider its opening paragraphs. It is the 41st millennium. For more than
I think I'm going to stop there because I already did a review of this in the previous video. Like I said, I just wanted to review... I was giving Adam Something the benefit of the doubt because I had not read the book. But it's pretty clear to me that I don't think he's actually read the book, Starship Troopers. It is a good book. It's definitely not militaristic. Because when you describe, I mean, yes, it does follow Johnny Rico, his journey through the military. But normally when you say militaristic, like for instance, Warhammer 40k is militaristic, right? That's definitely militaristic, right? But in Warhammer 40k, it makes sense because of the threats that they have to deal with the Imperium of Man. So it kind of makes sense why Warhammer 40k is militaristic. But the book Starship Troopers is set in the Terran Federation, which is almost like America in the future. Like, for instance, the soldiers are conscripts. They're not conscripts, they're volunteers. At numerous times in the story, it actually does talk about the fact that they try to de-incentivize people from joining the military. A militaristic book wouldn't do that. A militaristic book would do the exact opposite. It would make militarism sound like it was the best thing ever. Whereas, in my opinion, the book actually really sounded like it's interesting that the person who wrote the book was a soldier. It sounds like that this person who wrote the book really understood what thoughts a soldier actually had. Like at one point in the story, Johnny Rico doubts whether he should actually be in the military after passing boot camp, and he's looking forward to leaving. You know, there's numerous instances in the story where it actually questions militarism. So to call it militaristic is really to undermine. It's really to just obfuscate what the work is really about. So, like I said, I definitely think if you haven't read Starship Troopers, you really should read it. It's really a good book. It's not going to be what you're expecting, but it is especially if you want to understand what it's like to be a soldier in the military. What it's like to actually go through boot camp and like that. Like I said, very little of the book talks about war, about actual. Most of it is about Johnny Rico's experience in the military, from getting through boot camp to becoming a sergeant to leading a squad. It's really more about the life of somebody in the military rather than combat itself, which is not what you would expect from a book about militarism. Alright, that's all I had to say about this particular video. Like I said, if you haven't read Starship Troopers, you really should read it. It's a very good book. It's not going to be what you're expecting, but it is a very good book. This was G-Man Gaming and Reviews signing off. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Oh, and just in case you haven't watched it, in the video, in the card, you should see a link to the other video I did. That was a reaction to Gums's video on why Space Marine 2 failed. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.